friends, today is the 30th of November, 2013 year. I am Vadim Zaporozhtsov. Together with Mikhail Kolesnikov, we are conducting a seminar on the Vishuddha Chakra. All information is on the website of Open Yoga, less than Earl greater than. This is the third part of the seminar. We have done some nice exercises to get from the rough to the subtle to work with the Vishuddha Chakra. What is good about yoga? It is good for its practicality. There is a very sophisticated theory here, quite complex. Continuously goes into practice. Moreover, the structure of your body. We remember that in this respect, yoga is a very interesting science. On the one hand, yoga theory, is like for a mathematician. I carry everything with me. A piece of paper and a pencil. On the other hand, practice is, like a laboratory for a physicist. The lab is always with you. And therefore, any theory, it is interesting in yoga, strictly speaking, in one sense. And can you apply it in your life somehow or not? Here. Therefore, these exercises from the rough to the subtle, what did we do? You and I, one way or another, affected the area at the base of the throat. And as a result, of course, first of all, they focused attention on this place. That is, and the very concentration of attention already makes you pay attention, well, as if to comprehend the device. If all this is also connected with the presence of a partner who, as in a mirror, reflects all our internal processes, then, well, as if the result can be achieved much faster. This is the logic here. Friends, the universe doesn't like egoists. She doesn't like egoists. And yoga even more so does not like egoists. It is clear that at first we are, as they say, herd animals, we do like everyone else. Then there comes a period when we begin to isolate ourselves from society for some spiritual purposes of our own. We begin to explore our inner world, and the environment of other people seems to be alien to us. But if everything goes right, then a period of loneliness passes, and you begin to feel inside yourself the desire to communicate and practice with your own kind. And as practice shows, this third stage on the path in yoga is the fastest. Because you see all your strengths and weaknesses in a mirror. As in a mirror, you can feel better, clearer and faster some subtle nuances, which we may have only guessed, but which eluded you. Here. Therefore, here are all the paired practices. They are extremely effective. But once again, they have the disadvantage that you have to have a pair. Well, it still needs to be done with someone. Here. So, that's wonderful. Maybe there are some questions about our entire seminar today. Let's ask them. Dmitry, Anna Kirsanova. Yeah. Why does a zygote appear when you concentrate on the grid? Well, actually, here's another one. Such a bundle is very interesting already with pranayama yoga, as well as with what is called the circulation of pranas in the body. It is from such sources, again, as Shiva Samhita and so on, that it is known that there are, as it were, private manifestations of prana within us. There are 5 main manifestations of pranas, and 5 auxiliary ones, as described in these texts. And one of the auxiliary manifestations of prana is precisely yawning. That's why in ancient texts, they singled out this, function of ours, right? Into a separate kind of prana activity, as if separating it, say, from such an activity as hiccups. Here. And many will find out. It's clear that this thing. Thank you. So it's clear that there is something. That's when we want to sleep, we yawn. That is, there are some processes associated with the Vishuddha chakra. That is, both the process of breathing and the process of transition from one space to another. From the waking space, the space of dreams. Moreover, it is believed that, as we have already said, these pranas, in particular, some of these pranas are responsible for, say, the separation of the gross body from the subtle body. It will be possible to talk about more or less sane details here only after we begin to rediscover those mentions in yoga that are in the texts, but which are not fully understood. Friends, you must remember that we only know the crumbs to know. Most of the yoga, apparently, has not reached us for various reasons. So, any more questions? There is no question. Part-time students do not have in the hall. They ask why it is contagious. Not, well, you know, yes, that it is possible to consider this process purely physiological, what it does in medicine. But there is also an aspect, as it were, that eludes such a simple dissection of a person. And such a factor is, well, really, some kind of common wave of all. Friends, there is such a space for research here. Absolutely. Well, yes, here you can answer as axiomatically. Yawning is contagious because there are no separate pranas. There is a single prana of the absolute. Everything else, yes, extends to similar circles on the surface of the water. So that's wonderful. Let's get back to the theory. So, the principle of space. Here. This is quite an interesting universal principle. We are used to our usual physical space. We have already said that scientists have told us a lot of interesting things about space, that it is curved, that it is rigidly connected with time, and we cannot talk about space without time, and time without space. Here. At the same time, the approach in, say, mathematics is very interesting, you know. There is space in mathematics, too. This means that these spaces are defined purely mathematically, as, say, a set of certain objects with certain properties, and with certain operations that you can do with it. And there can be any space. Let's say the space of all the refrigerators of the globe. Here. Or the space of all people. But this is a purely mathematical abstraction, but I like it more than that, because I feel that sooner or later, we will move on to the fact that we will present the highest teachings of yoga. No longer with images of breaks there, bow loops, and goads there. And sooner or later, we will move on to the mathematical language. In any case, even now it seems to me that it is necessary to make the first attempts to somehow connect the microcosm of a person with perhaps even completely abstract things that exist in the microcosm of our life. But it's interesting, you know, here's another very interesting idea of modern physicists, that our universe originated from the Big Bang. And it turned out that at some point in time it was roughly counted, there are some billions of years, tens of years. Everything was kind of compressed at one point, and then it started to expand. The so-called concept of the Big Bang intersects well with the concept of pralaya in yoga. And it's very interesting, but in what way is our universe expanding? Even if we approach this issue from a modern, such a scientific point of view. And at what rate it is expanding. This is called, in other words, the inflation of the universe. Expansion, inflating. So, it turns out that the space in our view expands in something where there is no space.
Пространство в нашем представлении расширяется в чем-то, где нет пространства.
Moreover, it is expanding at a fairly high speed. And this speed is greater than the speed of light. The speed of light is now considered by scientists to be the largest known in our universe. I mean, you know, this is a very, very strange concept, a very strange concept.
Очень странная концепция.
When you start thinking about it, your brain boils involuntarily.
Мозги вскипают.
At night, you look at the cloudless sky, you see the stars, you think, where is the end of the universe? Mentally, you begin to outline the end, as it were, and then you realize that there is no end. And it somehow becomes very uncomfortable, as if you were turned inside out. Here. Therefore, strictly speaking, we are just used to such a concept as space, once again.
Еще раз, мы просто привыкли
We have at least some way of life, our physical space.
к жизни, наше физическое пространство.
But at the same time, remember your dreams. And in some dreams, you will see familiar places from the physical world, but in a completely different geometry and sequence.
Другой какой-то геометрии и последовательности.
Let's say your apartment, and you will know for sure in a dream that this is your apartment suddenly somehow turns out, in a completely incomprehensible way. Moreover, in a dream, there will be an unambiguous kind of logical completeness of one element in relation to another. That is, you will not get lost there. You will understand that I walk around my apartment, but it's kind of weird. But I know where to go. Then you wake up, remember your apartment, and realize that everything is completely different in life there. There's a turn in the other direction, a corridor or something. And how it overlaps one with the other. That is, sooner or later, analyzing, say, your dream with dreams and with a waking state, where you see, as it were, perceive the same objects or phenomena there, you approach through the yoga of dreams just to the awareness of the Vishuddha Chakra. Namely that universal space, where your sleep is a special case, your wakefulness is a special case.
Вишудха чакры. Именно того универсального пространства, где ваш сон это частный случай, ваше бодрствование это частный случай.
Some more universal thing, a universal space, and it's called Akasha. And translated in these texts, it is designated as ether. Well, once again, as we said, like a radio broadcast, that is, a certain space ether. Here, but this is more, you know, well, like an elusive concept of capacity, which is a very complex concept.
Понятие вместимости, что очень сложное понятие.
On the other hand, friends, look, there is such a very interesting bunch for reflection. Yoga teaches us that all objects of the phenomenon in the universe are made of a combination of consciousness and energy.
Сделаны из комбинации сознания и энергии.
In other words, in fact, the principle of space is some kind of combination of sufficiently subtle energy and sufficiently subtle consciousness. Which is in his? In its intersection, it just made the very possibility that something could be, well, that there is a container.
Есть вместилище.
And accordingly, as it is said in these texts with which we started, certain abilities or superpowers come. As it was believed in yoga.
Выделенные способности или сверхспособности, как считалось в йоге,
I'm going to do it again. Let's reread the same thing that we started the seminar with. But I hope that you will perceive these texts a little differently now. Please. Shiva Samhita, Meditation on Vishuddha. The one immediately comprehends all four yogs with their secrets. So, come on, come on. The meditations on Vishuddha are unified and comprehend all four yogs at once with all the secrets. Well, here's the list above there. There is its own Shiva Samhita classification of yogas. In general, there are many different classifications of them. When Ijin concentrates on this secret place, feels anger, all three worlds begin to tremble. We've already discussed this with you, haven't we? That is, if you control the container, you can mix the contents in such a way that it will not seem enough to anyone there. Next, even if, Even if the mind of one accidentally concentrates on this place, it ceases to perceive the external world and focuses on the inner world. Here is a very interesting link with over yoga. Because when you listen to music, or when you listen to so-called subtle sounds. Today, we did one of the exercises when you sang mantra and covered your ears with your fingers. And when this polyphony goes on, sometimes very subtle ones suddenly pop up in the background. A subtle sound, like the overflow of something. It seems, you know, that in Tuva there is this throat singing, turning into something that is nothing. In Tibet, this is the very first thing to sing. They either sing very low in this way, or they go into very high ones. By the way, we had a record somewhere, put it so that yes. It is believed that this is the first glimpse. If your mind grasps it, it will be completely absorbed by nada. Because such a comparison in yoga is given that how to catch a deer. By deer is meant the mind. After all, he's so nimble and timid. Jump, 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 and ran. Here. And such an example was given that, well, it's probably historically that if you play the flute, then the deer, attracted by the sound of the flute, comes out of curiosity to listen like this. And it means that yoga works. That is, if you focus on the grid, focus on this inner sound of the music of the spheres, then you fail. And forget about everything in the world. Once again, all music lovers know about it. There are headphones in my ears as everything around disappeared. Here. And again, it says here. That is, in fact, it is very practical. Well, there weren't really these players with headphones then. But no one bothered to plug your fingers and focus on the subtle vibrations you need. Internal vibrations that sound regardless of whether you have a player or not, as the South claims. Next, his body never weakens and remains full of strength for 1,000 years. He becomes as hard as a diamond. When Ijin enters such contemplation, thousands of years are like a minute for him. That is, here again we are approaching to. Well, there's a lot you can say that there's about a diamond and about thousands of years. But let's talk about the time factor. That is, you go to such heights where you are actually not noticed for a while. Just as if you know, you are watching something interesting, you are reading, time is instantaneous. It passes. The following text. Now the following text, so what do we have there? Shat Chakra is not Shat Chakra, not Ruan. In the throat, there is a lotus called Vishuddha pure. The smoke is purple in color. All the letters shine on 16 crimson petals, clearly introduced to one whose mind is enlightened. At the base of this lotus is a region of ether of a round shape, similar to the full moon. Next one. On a snow-white elephant, Bija Ambari settles here, and his robes are white. Two of his hands hold a noose and a goad, while the other two hold a gesture of blessing and averting fear. And this addition complements its charm. A snow-white deity, a three-eyed Vilakoi, with 10 beautiful hands, dressed in a tiger skin, always sparkles on his lap. His body is connected to that which is born of mountains, Parvati. And he is known by the name of Sada Shiva, always beneficent. Shah Tishikini shines in this lotus, purer than the ocean of nectar. And her robes are yellow in their four. She carries a bow, an arrow, a noose, and a dragonfly on 4 toss-like arms. At the base of this lotus, the entire region of the moon is not stained with the sign of the hare. Well, I'll explain. The sign of the hare is a drawing on the moon. You know, when you go out into the woods, and there are some mountains, there's something lighter, something darker. So, well, I do not know, maybe it is better seen by the Hindu, but for some reason, they saw that it was a lunar hare. Yes, that's the sign of the hare, right. That is, well, the sign of the hare, it means there's something there. Into the craters. Yes. Here is the gateway of the path to great liberation, for those who wish to attain the riches of yoga, seek the senses. and whose senses are purified and controlled. Here, pay attention. All the senses are purified and controlled. That is, it is clear that from the list of the five senses, this is, as it were, the last one. You control her, you control everything else. But really, I remind you that in other texts, say, such as Ananda Lahari, and the mind is not reduced to feeling. In other words, the goddess Shri is considered so beautiful in this very Ananda Lahara that, compared to her, even the mind is just a sense organ. A sadhaka who has attained the fullness of knowledge of the Atman by constantly concentrating his consciousness on this lotus becomes a great saint, eloquent, wise, and enjoying the inviolable peace of consciousness. He observes the past, the present, and the future, and becomes the benefactor of everything, free from ailments and suffering, long-lived, and, like Hamsa, the destroyer of endless dangers. The yujin, whose mind is firmly fixed on this lotus, whose breath is controlled by him, has the power to pass through the three worlds. They are Brahmas, and Brahma, a little bit back. That's whose mind is steadily fixed on this lotus. Let's think about it. Ijin, whose mind is steadily fixed on this lotus, is further away, whose breathing is controlled by Kuaka, whose breathing is controlled by Kuakai, has the power to pass, has the power to pass that, has the power to pass through three worlds. So look, it's very allegorical here. What is the indication? Absolutely correct. On the pranaya. Here, not Brahma, Vishnu, nor Hari Harari. Hari, ha ha ha. Not Ga. Ga. The Ganapatis are not able to suspend it. Yeah, wonderful. Next. Well, a little bit we are their reception. Come on, Adam gave Hari. From afar. I greet Shiva in your Vishuddha, pure, transparent as crystal, the originator of ether, the liberating world of darkness. And that one goddess with him, who, like birds, Chakori, enjoys the moonbeams emanating from them. So look here, let's say a few words. Such a very interesting, beautiful mythological image of a chicory bird. It is believed that she, well, as such an image, yes, that she feeds on moonbeams. Imagine a bird that feeds on moonbeams. That is, you know, the limit of refinement. And indirectly, look, an indication of the energy of consciousness, the Shiva of consciousness, which means, accordingly, his spouse is myself, well, or in one of the literal translations, a friend, a goddess. And they are one. Do you remember this image of Sadashila? That, as it were, the unity of consciousness and energy, in all its most powerful beauty, is present here. Therefore, any mantra. Well, why is the yoga mantra, or the repetition of certain mantras, so powerful? After all, in fact, now in India, mantra yoga has remained from yoga, friends. How to make a pose, no one knows there. It's better not to ask about philosophy. Otherwise it will get bad. Here. But mantras per on every corner, and that's it. And smart, and stupid, and all of them. Because in fact, with, well, a situation where yoga began to disappear, when there is simply no one to carry it further. Only the most powerful remains. Here. And that's why they love mantras. Everyone loves mantras very much. And indeed, if the mantra is awakened, then it is a direct entrance between consciousness and energy. It's not clear where your consciousness, clothed in energy, passes one into the other. And so here again, for students of the Open University, especially in early courses, it's just a tough requirement. Repeat mantras out loud as much as possible. as much as possible. But, unfortunately, it doesn't always work out, because relatives and friends usually think that we are completely crazy when we start repeating mantras out loud. Here. That's why we have classes here from time to time already. It's okay here. The bribes are smooth. A madhouse on the road, you know. Few people pay attention. And generally speaking, this is a very, very important factor. Here. Here is the darkness of inner ignorance, and the clouding of the mind, the blind spots of our mind. The blind spots around us are best illuminated with a flash of a mantra. When you start saying it, of course, you will learn more about this in the course of mantra yoga. But I really like such a poetic expression that a mantra is like a lamp that stands on the threshold of a house at night. It illuminates everything outside the house and everything inside the house. It's the same here. These are the methods of using mantras and, as it were, Vishuddha chakras. And it suddenly imperceptibly takes you to a qualitatively new level of being for you. And if you have such a habit, then the swamp of ordinary life will never swallow you up again, it will only start to suck you in. You will begin to repeat the mantra, and these vibrations, the connection of consciousness with energy instantly, you know. Just like the rays of light destroy darkness, instantly shake off the resemblance from the mind, the veil from the mind. Here. Once and everything became clear. Then you are not afraid of any causal schizophrenia. So you are not afraid of any cleaning. Just felt that something went wrong. Opanki. And they started practicing the mantra out loud. This is a purely practical moment of using the Vishuddha chakra, the speech center. And sometimes people ask, my God, well, will anything change if I say something out loud? Or I will be silent in this depression, melancholy, and die. I don't want to turn my tongue, do I? That's the trick, my friends. That's the word reluctance, it's not reluctance. You have already been paralyzed and bombed. You know, you've already had it tied up on the outside, so that later. And when you begin to pronounce, you involuntarily tear the bonds. Therefore, once again, in this regard, the link with the mantra, yoga, is a matter of your survival. There is a set of such practices that you want, you don't want, you have to dial. It's like a bank account. You never know what kind of karma. For a rainy day, let it lie. Practice mantras out loud. He earns a little every day. Engage Vishuddha. Then there will be a moment when it's really bad, and you're out of curiosity. Well, everything is really bad. Let me repeat the mantra now. One, another, the third time loudly repeated, when suddenly something began to clear up, when suddenly you realized that your inner world, your inner space, and the outer space of problems are two completely different spaces. In that space, or in bestiality, you feel bad. In general, everything is bad there. Muzzles, as we said today. And then one. Well, yes, the muzzles remained, but not somewhere there. That is, as it were, like this feeling of such purity. It's not for nothing that here is an image with a crystal. Crystal clear. So this is the very image of Shiva, right? That is, as the mantra progresses, you will suddenly begin to realize that your inner space is being cleaned. Well, in this regard, there are the following methods, practices, and quite specific advice recommendations. If you want to clean some place from all the dirt that is there, but it means not physical dirt, but physical, you need to take a menik, yes, and sweep it up, wash it, and so on. But sometimes you go to some place, it's clean, but you still feel the dirt. I've been teaching yoga for a long time, and I know you want a super-duper carved yoga center somehow. Everything rolls, glitters, sparkles, yes. But you feel there is no life here. No. And more than once you crawl into such a pit, but you feel a vibration, that there's something elusive there, right? And here's the question of how to make, in general, a suitable place for yourself anywhere. Of course, with the help of a mantra, the recitation of a mantra. Out loud or to myself. And it's really, like a shower that washes away all this mold, all these associative connections. Everything gives thought forms when sticky ones fly there. Everything is washed away. That's why we require students to have a set of pronounced mantras. 108,000, if the mantra has not scored a repetition time. Actually, nothing. It's better not to mess with you at all. You will be crushed at the most inopportune moment, and then we will find out for a long time what's what. This is quite a serious figure, 108,000. Say mantras. But I assure you, those of you who recite 108,000 mantras, you will mark for yourself, your life will begin to change. It's hard to explain logically. That's it. Here we have now opened the department of mantra yoga. That's where everything is. That's where they're going to be explained. Yes, so I'm just for what? That again, this fifth center is involved. By washing it, you are washing everything, everyone else. So wonderful. It's time. And there's no time left, yes. So, then let's do the next thing. I ask for your feedback, as always, on this seminar, on the website of the Chakra Open Yoga course, >Earl>, where our free online yoga courses are. There is a corresponding branch of reviews at seminars. Please write at least something, praise, scold, say that I already knew everything, there or I don't want to know. You remember, right? When they praise it's nice, when they scold purr. In any case, it's good. And the benefit to us, as feedback, is the benefit to others who are interested in this topic, but simply do not know where to look. Believe me, normal yoga, sane, not like in Moscow, all over the world. Oh, how hard it is to find. That without without astronauts, without this whole insane public. Oh, how hard it is. Almost impossible. So the question is so that other people can also find us. This is a question, well, in a certain sense of per. Therefore, if there is an opportunity there on social networks, on the forum, somewhere else on Twitter, tweet a review. Please do it. And in any. Praise is nice, scold even better.